It's the Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Reda. Well, today's guest, very special guy. A Stanley Cup champion who set NHL records for most saves in a playoff run, most saves in a Stanley Cup final. He became just the second U.S.-born player to win the Conn Smyth as the playoff MVP. He was the oldest player ever to win it at the time, a four-time NHL All Star, a two-time Vezina Trophy winner, a man who suffered such a serious concussion that it ended his career and completely changed his life. Just wait till you hear his story. I'm talking, of course, of Tim Thomas. Timmy, great to have you with us, my friend. It is great to revisit for you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you. Speaking of Domino's Pizza, I delivered Domino's Pizza when I was in high school, and actually when I was playing on my junior hockey team.
That's unbelievable. That's great. That's a long time ago. I want to begin on your journey because at the end of the day, you accomplished something that, you know, guys strive for, to win a Stanley Cup in the National Hockey League. And at the end of the day, you won Vezinas, you won Conn Smyth, you accomplished a lot, but it was a long journey for you. You were a 9th round pick in 1994. You went through U.S. College, the IHL, the Finnish Hockey League, ECHL, the American Hockey League, back to the I, back to Finland, back to the A, before you finally became a starter in the NHL at 31 years of age. What was going through your mind during that era, and what do you take from that made you the guy you were when you ultimately got your chance?
That's a large question, of course. Well, first of all, growing up where I did in Michigan, like, I didn't actually grow up like thinking about the NHL very much. There was a minor league IHL hockey league was in there. There was a local team in my hometown, Flint Generals, and there were also 6 or 7 other teams within a couple-hour drive. And so, like, my heroes growing up were the IHL players. So when I thought of what I might want to do when I got older, it was to play in my hometown, pro team. and also, but to add into that, at a very formative time in my life, back in 1980, when the U.S. won that gold medal at the Olympics in Lake Placid, it had a huge impact on me. So I would say my major goal growing up was to make the Olympics. It wasn't NHL focused, as a lot of young Canadian hockey players, and American hockey players too, depending on where you live or what have you. And so when I made it getting to college was hard enough. I mean, I made my junior team as the third goalie, and I was fortunate enough to get to University of Vermont because of a goalie signing pro late, very late, and they had very limited options, which is how I got to Vermont, which was great. I live in Vermont now. But so when I got to college, the next Olympics was supposed to be when I would have been a sophomore. And then by the time my sophomore year of college rolled around, before that season started, that's when they let the NHL players go to the Olympics,
which changed the Olympic Games entirely.
It changed my life course, really, and at least the path that I'd made in my mind.
Yeah.
And so then I'm at that point, I'm kind of like, okay, well, now I got to make it to the NHL, and I'll try to make it for the next Olympics after I'm out of college.
So your whole goal in getting to the NHL was to get exposure so you could play for Team USA?
Yeah. Yeah. That was my mindset.
That's hilarious.
But then, through a set of circumstances of my agent, Bill Zito, and actually him knowing Jarmo Kekalainen, who was the GM of a Finnish team at the time, IFK, and I had the opportunity to go to Finland for a tryout December 1st. So I went to Finland to that team for a tryout, and I won the championship that season. And by that point, I'm starting to feel like, okay, I'm not in the NHL, but I'm getting back on track. Partially because a lot of times there's still a couple of guys that were playing in Europe that made the Olympics team at that time. So I was like, okay, maybe I can play in Europe and make the Olympic team. Because, like I said, that was deep down the thing that I was, my goal, so to speak.
You're playing in Europe to get seen so you could play for Team USA at the Olympics, and it turns out to be the opening for you to get to the NHL.
Yeah, yeah, and of course by that time I was open to making the NHL. It wasn't like I was writing it off. Just the overarching goal was the Olympics, and if I made the NHL, I was closer to the Olympics. So I was still shooting for the NHL. But so I played that season in Sweden, and Boston Bruins signed me after that. I believe that was 2001.
Yeah.
2001 was when I signed with the Boston Bruins organization. My first year with the organization, they sent me to play for a team in Finland, actually. So I played another season in Finland. Then I came back and played a couple of years in Providence. I actually got 4 games in 2002, 2003. When I was my first year with Providence, I was up with Boston for enough to get 4 games in. And at that time, I thought, okay, I'm knocking on the door. Then I finally looked like I was making the NHL, and then we had the lockout season.
Yeah,
and where I again went back to Finland. Had an incredible year over there. I think I know I had 15 shutouts and 54 games played, and set quite a few of their league records that I think will stand for quite some time. My wife ended up joining me at like the beginning September 1st of that season with our my 2 daughters, and she was 8 months pregnant almost when she got there. And then to make a long story short, I finally got the call from Boston. I thought I finally got the call from Boston that I was going to be in the NHL. So I signed a contract with Boston, a one-way contract. I had to come back from Finland with an 8.5-month pregnant wife, hiding her behind the ticket desk because, a dog and 2 other kids and hockey bags galore. And spent a couple weeks in Boston's camp, and they sent me to the minors. That's the name of that's hockey.
Yeah,
it's you gotta deal with ups and downs if you know.
Honestly, Tim, like when I look back on that, I just think of your perseverance, because there were a lot of guys at that point, and there have been a lot of guys through hockey history that at that point they would just said, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. I can make more money working in a bank or, being a salesperson than the kind of situation that you were putting through, and tirelessly you just stayed at it. And as I mentioned, you ended up, not only earning your spot with the Bruins, but becoming one of the premier goalies in the entire NHL. You won your Vezina, and then you come back and then you hit another major blip when you had the off-season surgery. And the 2010-2011 season was one of the all-time great seasons by any goalie. But it started out rough for you because you had that off-season hip surgery. And we were all wondering, like, oh, man, is this guy going to be okay? And you came in to turn another Vezina winning season in 2010-11. But it also became one of the all-time great postseason performances by a goalie in NHL history. It was like, what were your recollections of that year, the way you got through the hip surgery? And I mean, I can imagine that year must have been, I guess in some ways, maybe a blur for you, because it was a year that we all remember very fondly, and it ended up with you guys winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. That year was a blur, especially since when you win, you don't really have all that much time to sit back and look at it, right? It's opportunities come with it. More team events to celebrate it come with it the next year. You hardly have time to really sit and realize exactly what had taken place.
What kind of moments stood out in your mind in the playoffs in that? Because one of the games that really stood out for me was Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final. You guys were facing Tampa, and you shut them out. This is Game 7, and you shut like one of those. It's legendary where a goalie sits in the room and says, "Score one, we'll win." I'm not sure that you actually did that in your pregame speech, but that's what happened. All you needed was one goal, and you won Game 7, and you were going to the Stanley Cup final. What was that like to be a part of that?
Well, first, I wouldn't have said just score me one goal. That's all we need. I would have been like, please, guys, score me like 5. So I won't be as stressed and it'll be a little bit easier. I had a a heavy suspicion that it was going to be a really tight game.
Yeah.
I didn't know that we were going to be able to get out of it, 1-0. I was thinking maybe 2-1 or something like that, or 1-1 with overtime or something like that. And so I just going into that game, I knew I had a tight game. And I wanted to say, like, you talked about my perseverance, and I did persevere, but like it wasn't hard for me to persevere all the years that I was playing hockey. Like I really enjoyed what I did, and I was quite good at it too, which makes it more enjoyable for a person, right? And coming from my background of Flint, Michigan, uh, where my family was mostly in car sales or what have you, like I actually didn't have another job that I could go and make more than I was making in Europe, right? So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing, and as my career went on, I had so many times where it looked like I wasn't going to make the NHL, and I made peace with it quite a few times. I was like, if I had to play it if I played till I was 40 here in Sweden, I could have a happy life.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same. So anyhow, moving on, I actually this isn't to sound cocky, but like I started to get so good that like I wanted to see how good I could get.
Awesome.
And so in the process of doing that, I won the Vezina in 2009, and that was a big deal. And but then the next year is actually the 2010 Vancouver Olympics.
Yep.
And that year was the year that I had played with a hurt hip the whole year. I'll be honest, if it wasn't for the Olympics, I might not have played through that year. Just because, I mean, even when I got to the Olympics, I was actually so happy to be there, and I'm so happy I had that experience. But I was actually kind of happy that Ryan Miller was playing, not only because he was good and he was hot at that time, but just because I didn't know if I could play as good as I possibly could. So that year was a tough one. And then by the end of the season, I was hurting so bad. And then Tuukka started ended up playing very good, very well. The end of that year, the 2009-2010 season. So he ended up getting the playoff starting opportunity that year. And as you said, after that summer, right after that, I went and had hip surgery. And when I started to recover from the hip surgery, I started to feel really good, actually. And I started to feel so good that really I went into that 2010-2011 season with a little bit of chip on my shoulder of like wanting to show the world that I was as good as I was in 2009. Because of the drop off. And so it was a little bit of that. It was a little bit prove to the world how good I could be, and also to prove to myself. I knew I was I didn't feel like it, but I knew I was 37 or 36 that season. I knew I wouldn't feel that good forever. So as things went on that year and snowballed into such a great season, I just wanted to keep going with it. And so then, when we get into the playoffs, like it carried a lot of momentum into the playoffs with that kind of attitude. And I wasn't like, it wasn't like this is a year I have to win the cup or we have to win the cup in my mind. It was like, okay, I'm playing as good this year as I've ever played. Let's see how far it can take us. And so even in the really stressful situations, the game sevens, I was like, I was less nervous than maybe one would have thought, or myself would have even thought. Because I like my world wasn't dependent on whether we won or not. I just wanted to.
Was you're amazing. I mean, I was lucky enough that I got to be there for the entire playoffs in 2010-11 and to watch this stuff unfold. Get ready for the game with the Domino's $8.99 mix and match deal. Score big with any medium two-topping pizza and any two items like pastas, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Domino's has you covered. Order today from Canada's favorite pizza at domino's.ca. You get the shutout in Game 7, the Eastern Final. You're in the Stanley Cup Final now. And listen, you had a good team. There was a lot of great talent on that team. But the stuff that you were doing was crazy. You had 798 saves in that playoff run. That's an NHL record for most saves. You had 238 saves in the Stanley Cup Final alone, and you won Game 7 in a 4-0 shutout in Vancouver, much to the dismay of the Vancouver fans who ended up rioting after the game. I remember being on the ice for the celebration for you guys, and I remember interviewing, we've had Z on this show, Zdeno Chara, and I remember interviewing Z on the ice in his skates. He must have been 7'2" or 7'3" in his skates, and I'm like reaching up at this guy and watching the celly for you guys. It was amazing, and you had your families on the ice. And what was it like for you? I mean, the game really, I mean, you ended up winning the Conn Smyth, which was amazing. What was it like for you when that clock ticked down to 0 and you realized, I've done it? I'm a Stanley Cup champion.
You know, that had the hardest time setting in for me. Like I don't know how to explain it, but I actually in like my interview right after the game, Stanley Cup Game 7, I was asked what it feels like to be, on top of the goalie world, or on top, and basically I said the honest truth at the time, and it was like I said it hasn't set in. Like I still feel like I'm getting ready to play the next game, and that's kind of how I felt like. Because the playoffs are so long and the season period, like I got myself in such a mindset of like not too high, not too low, not letting any victory get me too off track emotionally or defeat, that once it actually happened, it wasn't disbelief, but there definitely was failure to like really soak in completely the gravity of the situation. And yeah, as far as the Vancouver riot goes, though, I bragged to my friends quite a bit that at the time it was the largest riot in North American history, and I was largely responsible.
That's a good line. I've never heard you say that before. That's awesome. It was quite the celebration, and man, you were like, there was no debating that you were the Conn Smythe winner and stuff. And I want to ask you about something that happened afterwards. You talked about the fact that it was a blur, and I get it. It took a while for it to sink in, and I get it. But it wasn't long after that you came back and played the following year. But then you stepped away from the game, and I think at that point you had posted something about saying it was time for you to focus on family, friends, and your faith. Yeah. What was it that to the point you feel comfortable? What was it that made you feel like, because then you did end up coming back? What made you want to step away at that point?
It's hard to say completely accurately. I've tried to put it together myself. I mean, just my whole life. Everybody does it when you look back, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there was a couple things, that were going on in my life. I don't know how much I want to get into it, right? It's not necessarily my parents were having issues, and part of it was I wanted to get them out of Boston to try to save their marriage. And as long as I was playing in Boston, they were going to be there.
Okay.
So that was part of it. And my dad ended up actually leaving my mom and marrying this other woman that was involved at the time. But that was part of my thought process. Another one was another thing that I think looking back and from what I've learned now, and it'll sound really funny, as I believe right after I won the Stanley Cup, I went and stayed in a moldy house in Colorado. And that mold severely affected me over that summer that I took off. I came back and played the next season. I didn't really feel comfortable until like maybe December. That probably is how long it would have taken to get the mold out of my system. Yeah. And then, but after that season, though, I went back to the same house, not understanding what it could be. And then that ended up being the lockout season.
Right.
And so I stayed in that moldy house until, through the whole year. So by the time it looks like the season might start in December, I was like, I had no energy. My mind wasn't working right. It puts you in a type of fight or flight and things like that. So, and also, without getting into it too deeply, I would say mental health issues, certainly not about my ability to play. I knew I was good in that. It was more of, to be honest, it was more of a religious pattern of thinking that I had created based on my background growing up, and essentially, it devalued anything that I accomplished in hockey, because if you weren't saving souls, you weren't laying up treasures in heaven. And so I became very conflicted. In my background, essentially, if you were very wealthy, you weren't a Christian. You couldn't be a Christian and be really wealthy. And here I was making all of this money, and I became this star, and I thought I was confused. And then you add mold into it, which really does add confusion, because I've had 2 different houses since then that mold has affected me and my whole family severely. So it can kind of help with this messed up thinking. So can concussions, by the way. So anyways, that was part of what was going on, was a lot of confusion for me, I think, based on, a pattern of thinking that I had created, and mold. And, I told you what was going on with my parents, and, there's probably other reasons too.
Yeah. Listen, I appreciate you sharing your honesty. We've been so blessed on this show to have a number of people who kind of shared similar stories, and similar, like Paul Henderson is a man of tremendous faith. We've had a number of guys come on the show and say there were points in their career where they were conflicted. I've had fighters on this show who said, Stu Grimson, the Grim Reaper, he said there was a time where he kind of went through it because, as a man of faith, he was like, am I really going to punch the snot out of this guy and still call myself a Christian? So I get it. I get what you're saying, and I get the conflict on and stuff, and I get how that can be difficult for you. So
I didn't get it for years, meaning, like, when you're stuck in that pattern of thinking, or a pattern of thinking, any pattern of thinking, like it took me a long time to realize that, that type of thinking was what was influencing my decisions, even.
Right. Right. For sure. For sure. And there's sometimes when you get people around you who are trying to drive home that way of thinking, not giving you an opportunity to think on your own. It's hard. It's difficult.
Well, and I mean, yeah, in the case of, in my case, I was highly influenced by family and what I was taught, but it wasn't, I don't think they even understood the types of patterns of thinking that could come out of the way that they were teaching me to look at things.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're on the other side of it now. And I remember also when you did come back and played, there was an incident in December 2013 when you were playing with the Florida Panthers, and you suffered a concussion in that game. I mean, you were going through all the personal battles that you were going through. You come back, you're battling, like, as you say, through your battle, the conflict in your faith, and then the mold and the health issues that you were facing, and then you got that concussion. And I remember you talking about how difficult it was. I remember at one point, I think you said you woke up the next morning and couldn't even decide what to eat or where you wanted to go. What was that like for you after that? What's your recollection of the concussion and the way it impacted you moving forward after that?
Yeah, you what I told you was true. Essentially, when I woke up the next morning after uh, uh, taking a shot to the chin in warmups, actually, it wasn't even during the game. Um, like I got up and like generally, we have a schedule that we follow, but like if we have to be at the rink at 10:30, you set your alarm for 9, but if you wake up at 8, you're like, okay, I'm gonna stop here and get a coffee. I'm gonna stop here and get a sandwich, or I'm gonna, whatever, make a schedule. And I woke up and I couldn't do that at all. I was frozen. It was just terrible. And it was like, it's a terrible feeling still. And but then I remember vividly, like before I went to leave, uh, my wife asked me what I wanted for dinner that night, and I just like it. I just wanted to crawl up in a ball on the floor and suck my thumb, like because I don't know why. I still don't know why exactly. I mean, obviously there was damage, but I don't. You know what I mean? I don't know what happened. And uh, so yeah, I suffered with that. I was basically able to only follow the team schedule through that last season I played, and uh, many nights like I couldn't decide whether to go out to eat with the guys or whether I wanted to order in the hotel, and I would just get stuck, and it would be like 11 o'clock, and I hadn't eaten yet and stuff. And of course, nobody knew this. I didn't tell anybody. And when you're messed in the head, you don't really understand that you're messed in the head, or you're trying to put it right
Yeah.
because you want to go back and do your job.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then I went and played my last World Championships at the end of the year and took a couple of good knocks to the chin right in the last week that I played, and then went retired after that. And yeah, 1 year later after that, I got a brain scan, and without getting in the details, I had very little blood flow
Wow.
and very big signs of TBI. You know,
Yeah.
and I've suffered with that. It took years. I almost had to. It's like I had to rewire my thinking, my ability to choose. It's like I choose in a different way now. I generally have to think about things for a lot longer than most people. Like the like that the snap decisions that we all kind of take for granted, it's kind of gone for me. Or I think I've actually kind of built it back up,
Yeah.
but it was gone for a long time. And I mean, you can't really figure out what you want to do, where you want to go, like, uh, and so I've been at home a lot the last 10 years. Just
You mentioned TBI, just for our audience. I think that's traumatic brain injury that
yeah,
that you suffered through that. How are you doing today, Tim? Like, it seems like our conversation seems to be going well. It seems that you're tracking everything well. How are you doing, and where are you finding your support right now?
uh, well, first of all, my family has been supportive throughout the whole thing. It was they've been amazing. Uh, and actually, Ken Dryden's book Game Change,
Yeah.
right? That book actually, I was only like 3 years retired into that at that time period, and I was struggling, and that book actually, my mom read it first, and I think, and she ended up giving it to like my wife and my kids and myself. Like it taught me what was happening to myself a little bit. And so that was that book was very helpful in my situation.
Tim, I can't tell you how thankful we are that you share your story with us, because it means a lot to people out there who maybe be able to pick out different parts of your story and say, yeah, that's kind of happening to me, or yeah, I'm facing that kind of thing. And I think that means a lot to people to see somebody who's, I'll use the word, persevered and hung in there and been successful, and you're still continuing to do it today. I can't tell you what it means to, you know, as a fan of yours, I'm getting a chance to watch, to hear your story and to have you share this with us. This is amazing, Tim. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's just my story.
It's a great story. Before I let you go, I want to finish on kind of a lighter note, just kind of on um, some of the great people that you've played with. And it's something we call 5 fast facts. I'll ask you 5 questions, and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Okay? You're up for it?
Yep.
All right. Time now for 5 fast facts. With Stanley Cup champion and Conn Smyth Award winner Timmy Thomas, who was the best teammate you ever played with?
Oh, gosh. There is no one. I'm sorry. It's impossible. I mean, I'll just pick, because it's fast, I'm going to go with Vezina Trophy, just because of all around. Just he was our captain.
He was a legend, too.
Yeah.
Who's the best coach you ever played for?
Oh, gosh. Well, that's hard to say, too, right? I mean, I know these are supposed to be fast facts, but I played for Claude Julien when we won the cup, but I also played for Mike Sullivan, and he's won some cups, too, right? He's a pretty good coach. So
You've been lucky to have some winners, which has been great. Who did you hate playing against the most, and why?
Alexander Semin. I don't know if you remember him, but
Dude,
I don't know what it was about his shot, but I could not read it very well. It curved on me. He made me look silly in the AHL from a shot outside the blue line, and he made me look silly in the NHL from a shot outside the blue line. So
you had a great release, boy. Listen, after all your success in your career on and off the ice, if you could go back and talk to your 15-year-old self and give 15-year-old Timmy Thomas a piece of advice, what would you have said?
Well, enjoy the ride more, of course. I mean, I think that's a lot of people would say that. Some people wouldn't. Some people seem to enjoy the ride while it is. It isn't that I didn't enjoy it though either. It's being a hockey player and working your way up is very, very stressful.
One final question: if you hadn't become a professional hockey player, and you kind of alluded at this before, what do you think you would have done instead?
I don't know. I was an English major, history minor. I was politely told by an education professor when I was in college that if I go into that profession, they're going to tell me what to teach and how to do it. And he could tell that I probably wouldn't fit in there. So I probably wouldn't have been a teacher. I mean, with my background, some sort of salesman.
Fair enough. That's 5 fast facts with Stanley Cup champion Tim Thomas. Tim, before I let you go, one last question. We're in the midst of watching Ovechkin make NHL history, surpass Gretzky for most goals in NHL history. What are your recollections about Ovi?
I got a couple. But no, the one that I'll share right now is at the All Star Game in Montreal. I think it was in 2009. During the shootout competition, the guys don't even wear their helmets, and he came down on a shootout on me, and I ended up tripping him as he tried to deke me, and he slid into the boards like head first. And I popped up and ran skating into the corner. Like, you all right? You all right? And he says to me, "Russian machine never break." He wasn't right because he has had some injuries, but he's been pretty darn pretty bright, Russian machine never break.
Yeah, thank you so much for all this. I really, really appreciate it. Best of luck for you. It seems like you're still battling through this, but it sounds like you're winning. So thank you so much for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow, what a wonderful man. Our guest has been Tim Thomas, Stanley Cup champion, Vezina winner, Conn Smyth winner, one of the great Stanley Cup finals of all time. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by Domino's Pizza and Athlete's Care. If you're watching the big game at home or hungry right now, Domino's has you covered. Check out the Domino's Mix and Match deal. Medium 2-topping pizzas, pasta, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Any 2 items for only $8.99 each. Canada's favorite pizza at Domino's.ca. Athlete's Care is proud to be celebrating its 26th year offering sports medicine services to both elite athletes and the general population who require rehab for a new or chronic injury or pain. Go to where the best go. Athletes Care Sports Medicine Clinics with 26 locations in the Greater Toronto Area and in Ottawa. If you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca. The Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. As well, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at O-Time Podcast. Until next week, I'm Gino Reda saying so long, Key fans, and thanks for joining us on the Domino's Overtime Podcast.